Hey everybody, Elizabeth Nader back with you, Jersey First TV and the Nader Narrative, bringing you congressional candidates from all over New Jersey. What an incredible year, what an important year for midterms. And I want to bring Sue Kiley from District 6 to the show. Sue, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Happy to have you here. And we want people who don't know you to get to know you better, to understand your experience, your platform, and why you're running. And that's what I want to start with. I think the why behind the reason people run for any office is very important, especially Congress. It's no small thing. It's a big undertaking. So tell us, Sue, why run for Congress and why now?
All right. First of all, I'll tell you a little bit about career very quickly. Started as a registered nurse. From there, went into healthcare sales and marketing. And I did well. You know, I was very happy with what was going on until Superstorm Sandy hit. And when the storm hit, I live in Hazlet. And so a lot of the people around me were truly devastated by the storm. Literally houses lifted off their foundations and just floated away. And I couldn't see myself, getting on a plane Monday morning and just flying back to the job I had. So I stayed with, obviously the company was great about it. And I started doing public service, for lack of a better way to say it. I started walking around bringing food to people and, trying to help people get out of their second story because they got trapped up there. And this little old lady was so cute. She couldn't get out because she wouldn't bring her dog because the shelter wouldn't take the dog. Oh. So she just kept climbing further and further in her house and then ended up trapped at the top. But it just changed me. I don't know any other way to say it. And I decided I wanted to do more public service. I ran for office in my town. I was a commissioner. My first year I got elected. Then I was deputy director, then deputy mayor, then mayor. And then from there was asked to run for freeholder, which I did. And I was elected by a lot, over 60% of the vote. And I'm just in my second term as a commissioner. And that one I won by 63% of the vote. And I'm the deputy director today.
So with that public experience, track record, what was your biggest takeaway from all of that, would you say?
I think that leads into why I decided this was the year to run. Yeah. I have a compassionate and strong medical background. I have a very strong business background with, I'm doing multi-million-dollar contracts and having to do budgets, et cetera. And then I have the understanding of how government works and how it could maybe work a little better. So in light of the fact that we're not real happy with what's happening in Washington, I think this is the year. And I believe that a strong woman with the background in all three areas that I have has a very good chance of getting elected.
So, Sue, there are a lot of issues, as you say. I mean, this is a key year. The country is really teetering in a lot of areas. So let's fast forward to January. Congresswoman Kiley, what are we focusing on? What are your top three initiatives?
I should tell you, I have 5 children and I have 13 grandchildren.
Wow.
So a lot of what I focus on is around those kids. Yeah. And closing the border. I also should tell you that I'm responsible for Health and Human Services right now at the county. So I was responsible for that during COVID. And I'm watching these addiction rates go higher and higher, overdoses go higher and higher. So closing the border is a huge priority for me, for the obvious, so that we can use our resources. We invite 1 million people a year to come in legally, but our resources are getting thin. And the fentanyl that's coming in through that border is it's unbelievable, the volume of it that's coming in. That has to stop. Right. That affects everybody. I mean, everybody. Now they're lacing pot with fentanyl. I mean, these kids are, saying, well, maybe I'll just try it, and they're dead. So that's really important to me. The other thing that relates to children is a parent's rights to be involved in the education their children get, to have a say. They should have a say on whether or not their children have to get vaccines or boosters. I think all of that should be by the choice of the parent. I don't believe in mandates. I think everything should be, strongly recommended, maybe, but not mandated. We know our children better than anybody else, and we should make those kinds of decisions. We're talking about sex education in kindergarten. I have I have some kids that might have been able to handle that, and other kids that definitely could not have handled
No,
that.
no,
But
definitely not.
regardless, that's something I should be teaching them at home.
Right,
That shouldn't be in the schools.
right.
I guess the third one, which again impacts us all, is the inflation rate. And the gas prices are the highest they've ever been, ever. And on top of that, we have to put gas in our cars to get to the store to buy food, only to find out that most of the food we're buying is much higher than it used to be.
Right.
So we're in a world of hurt. And Frank Pallone, who I'm running against, is responsible for a huge committee, which is Energy and Commerce. And all of the things I'm talking about fall under there. Some things got to change. It's got to change. I've seen that his voting record is like 98%, maybe, and I might not be exactly right, but 98% with Nancy Pelosi, not necessarily what his constituents want.
Right, right.
That's a problem. That's a politician behaving as a politician. We have to behave as advocates for the people we represent.
Isn't that the truth? Somehow that gets forgotten. Let's talk about energy. He's on that committee. One of the most important things right now is what's changed there. We used to be energy independent, and now we have a president who's decided to take a different approach. Tell us where you stand on energy independence.
Open the Keystone Pipeline.
Yeah.
I believe it's critical for the United States to be able to be energy independent. I think that electric cars are probably a good idea. Gas cars are a good idea. I don't think we could go all to one or all to the other, because that's dangerous. But I think there are alternatives that we can put into place in our own country and not have to rely so heavily on other countries. Our president right now is considered or viewed by other leaders to be weak, indecisive. And again, that hurts us. That hurts us a lot. If we're going to make a decision to do something, we've got to make the decision and we got to do it.
Well, there's definitely a big difference between his foreign policy position and President Trump's foreign policy position. Do you support the policies of the Trump era?
I have to tell you, I wasn't sure how I felt about Mr. Trump, but I love his policies. I love his policies. And I told a story about one time when I was in sales and marketing, and I had a huge sale. I sold all of the surgical instruments and all of the equipment into a surgical operating room. And his mom was the one who paid for it all. So they had a big celebration to celebrate her and her generosity. And of course he was there and his family. And what struck me about him with his mother was how gentle and kind he was with her. And nobody else made any difference. He was focused and paying attention to her. And boy, that changed my view of who this man is, So having said that, I really softened on my personal opinion, and I loved the policies and programs he was putting into place. I loved that he was viewed as a strength or a force to be reckoned with, because that's what we need in a president.
Makes all the difference when it comes to foreign policy. So we find ourselves now facing this situation with Ukraine and Russia. What do you think we should be doing about that? We have Ukraine reaching out to us, Zelensky saying, help us, and DC saying no. What should our position be now that we find ourselves here? We could have done something about it, of course, before, but now that we're here, what do we do to get out of it?
Yeah, you're so right. Here we are. Well, first of all, if we hadn't left billions of dollars worth of weapons behind, we don't even have to go there. You know what I'm going to say.
Yes.
I think we should support the Ukrainians. I would like to do whatever we can. The last thing I want is to send boys back into the military. I don't want to see that happen. But short of that, I would like to do anything we can to support them, whether that's weapons or whatever we can do for them. I mean, this is a very strong country that's not willing to give up on their freedom. And I truly admire that. And they deserve to be supported.
Do you think that the position that Russia has taken and their aggression. And you look at China watching that, and you look at the weakness of the Biden administration. Is Taiwan the next issue? What do we do about China threatening Taiwan?
Guy, you're hitting all the key points. That terrifies me. And I shouldn't, that's the wrong word, but that's something that we should have extreme alarm about.
Yeah.
And if they are not in Washington already making pretty dynamic plans for how we're going to react to that before it already happens, that's even more frightening. We have to know what we're going to do, and we have to be prepared to do it.
Staying with China a little bit, the war in Ukraine sort of made COVID disappear, ironically, from the headlines. But of course, that's been our life for the past 2 years. As we film this, we are about 2 years out from the original Flatten the Curve, 2 weeks to flatten the curve, which changed our entire lives in the United States and throughout the world. Where do you see China in terms of their involvement with that? And in the future, how would we handle this better? Because the threat of another pandemic is always there. Mm-hmm. We need to know how to deal with it in a way that doesn't destroy who we are. So just some lessons learned, Sue, and how would you approach it differently?
Sure. I have health and human services now that I oversee as the liaison. And so was heavily involved in our solutions in Monmouth County to what we were going to do about COVID. In retrospect, I think that we did things that were not necessary. We just crushed a lot of business by making them close down, and the school masks on the kids, I thought was ridiculous. There were a lot of things that we did that didn't have to happen, in my humble opinion. There are a lot of doctors that speculate on could have, should have, would have, but I really believe we went overboard. I think we overreacted. I think there was a lot of politics that played into that. And in hindsight, I think we would use more common sense. I can't see us shutting down restaurants or shutting down businesses. In fact, when I was in the throes of the COVID and we got the CARES money, Monmouth County put out $48 million to small businesses because they were so desperate. And that wasn't, that wasn't even, did I say billion or million? I hope
you said billion, I think.
No, yeah. 48 million. Sometimes I hear myself after I say.
Maybe you didn't, but whatever you said, it was million. It's still a lot of money, not billions, but it's still a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. And, the other thing was that we gave out $10,000 increments as grants. But, when you think about the fact that we gave out 48 million, it was really substantial, and it helped a lot of people stay afloat. Right. Didn't save their lives, but it helped them stay afloat until the pandemic was starting to slow down.
Yeah.
I lots of speculation about where it came from or how it got here. And, I'm certainly not the expert on that, but lab creation is, to me, is a very big place to be suspicious.
Yeah. Well, Congress has some oversight of some of those monies, or should have, that may have gone over there. Kind of wrapped into COVID because of 2020 was the election and election integrity. It's sort of hard to separate the two issues as you look backwards, right? Because we got all this mail-in voting that was, under the guise of the COVID threat. So as we look forward now to this upcoming election in November, do you have concerns about election integrity? Do you think we've done enough, and what more can we do?
I think you're right that COVID played a huge part in, election integrity, because all of a sudden everybody had the vote by mail ballots. And I think that's the greatest place where questions about, whether these vote by mail ballots are correct or not correct, piles of them showing up, the day of the election. There's just too many things going on with vote by mail that are suspicious, put it that way. Yeah. And it's funny, I'm running now, so I'm talking to a lot of people, and many of the people I talked to said, I was winning until the vote by mail came in. I was winning until the vote by mail came in. You can't have so many people saying that without wondering what's going on. Yeah. I think vote by mail has its place. I do not think everyone should vote by mail, and I think we have to tighten up how we look at it, because it's the one place that seems to be where we're most vulnerable for election integrity misses.
Right. And we have a saying that you go to bed red and wake up blue, right? Because somewhere in the middle of the night, all the mail-in ballots got counted, and Republicans were winning, and then they wake up and they've lost. Do you have concerns that November will be secure? Do you feel like we're in a better place?
I think we're in a better place. The new, at least Monmouth County bought new poll booths and tablets for people to check in. And I think that's much, much better than we had in the past. As far as vote by mail, I'd love to tell you I know exactly what's being done to make sure it's legitimate, but I don't.
No.
And I am still concerned about that.
Well, the RNC is focusing a lot on poll watchers. So sometimes we just have to get back to the basics of human resources and putting eyes and ears where we need them. You mentioned people telling you stories about being, ahead and losing out as you talk to people in your district. And what else are you hearing as you're door knocking? I'm sure you've had plenty of events. You've talked to the people in your district. What do they say to you, Sue, in terms of their biggest concerns?
The most consistent phrase I hear: enough is enough. They're angry. They're angry. And you don't have to be a Democrat or a Republican to be angry with what is happening in our country. And most of that, well, all of it is being pinned on Frank Pallone, 34 years. What have you done for me lately? Those are the kinds of comments I'm getting. The other comments are, oh, you're not going to beat him. It's impossible to beat him. Wow. Nothing is impossible.
That's right.
And listen, there's a big groundswell. People want to help. They're volunteering to do whatever it takes with my campaign, and they're angry. They want to make a difference. They're afraid of their kids. What's going to happen to our children? Trillions of dollars of debt. They're going to have to pay it back. How do we do that?
Right. And I think a lot of people are driven by the hope that their children will have the country that they had, right, to grow up in and start a career and start a family. And it's definitely a risk. You went through redistricting, all the districts did, congressional redistricting. Did that make your district more red or more blue? How did it change it?
It was always very blue. And I don't think that's changed materially. I have gained, listen, I'm talking to you as if it's mine, right?
That's okay.
District 6 picked up Fairhaven, Rumson, and those are real good to pick up, for the Republican Party because they're strong Republican towns. But then the majority of the district is in Middlesex, and there's quite a bit of Democrats in Middlesex. So that's where the work is going to take place. The support is going to come from Monmouth. The work is going to go to Middlesex.
Two different places. One of the stories in New Jersey is always the independents. We have as many registered Democrats as we have people who are unaffiliated independents. And of course, Republicans is a lower number by about 1 million. The independents, do you believe, I'm curious, do you believe they're in the middle, or do you think with social issues, they actually tend to agree more with conservative values?
I believe they care more about the conservative values. I really do. We're hearing that more and more. We coined a phrase. We said last year was the red wave because so many people got into office. I'm calling this year the tsunami.
There you go. I love it.
Yeah. So we'll see. I would love to see us really have a huge impact this year and take out some of these people that have been there for a very long time and are siding with our president and Pelosi and, just staying in that old mindset, and things have to change.
Well, let's take that as the first issue of the lightning round, because as we wrap up, I'm going to throw out a few different issues and just quickly respond where you stand. So I'm going to start with term limits.
Okay. I think there should be term limits. My perfect would be 4-year terms, 3 of them max. And then we get a chance to really work at the job when we get into it.
Yeah. Okay. Second Amendment.
I support it. My husband is a retired cop. My son's a cop. I have nephews that are cop. My grandfather. We have a lot of police officers in the family, and I very much support everyone's right to bear arms.
What about the issue of life?
Life, meaning what? Pro-life?
Yes.
Yes, I am pro-life.
Okay. All right. And you had mentioned before, but just to kind of circle back to medical freedom, I heard you say you're not for mandates. So your position on medical freedom is what?
I really believe that we have to have the opportunity to make choices for ourselves. I really do. As a nurse, I'm thinking back to situations where someone was, near death from some particular incident and then refused treatment, and it used to kill me. Because you can make a huge impact on their lives if they take it, but if they say no, you've got to respect their wishes, and that's very tough.
Sure. And I mean, it's the basis of freedom, right? Is the
Right.
ability to choose and make a choice that's good for you. And it's hard to
Mhm.
say what's good for another person, but it's important for people to know, what you would do in Congress if that issue came before you. We know that President Biden has attempted to put mandates in place, and it has become a federal issue on some level. So related to that, and you sort of mentioned it, parental rights. There is a Congresswoman from Louisiana who will be bringing a parental rights bill, I believe, to Congress soon. Do you think parental rights is the issue of the year?
I think it's a very big issue, and
Yeah.
maybe the issue of the year. I mean, parents have to have a say in what happens to their children, and that is huge. That's our future.
Mhm.
Nobody's going to tell me that my kid can have this and can't have that, and those are our decisions. Jack Chitarelli coined a great phrase last year. He said there are kitchen table issues that need to stay at the kitchen table, and I couldn't agree with that more. I started to say earlier, I know my kids, I know which one can handle things, which one can't. Some could be educated on more about birth and life at a younger age, and others we were telling the stork was coming. So it just really depends on the child, and no one knows that child better than their parent.
That's right. Well, from one mother to another, I agree with you wholeheartedly on that. So, Sue, this has been great. We've touched a lot of issues, which I appreciate you helping the audience understand your positions. How can they help you? How do they find out more about you, your events, donate, all the things that matter in a congressional campaign?
Great. I'm so glad you brought that up.
Absolutely.
I have a website, SueKiley.com, pretty easy to remember. And on that website, you will find information on who I am. There's a video that, with the points that I'm supporting. You'll find a donate button, very important.
Yes.
I always tell people, even if you are not in my voting district, what happens in Congress happens to everyone in the
So true.
US.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we will take all the help we can get to bring conservative values back to Washington.
I couldn't agree with you more. One of the reasons we're doing this is we want statewide support for candidates and even outside of our state. It is the year to save the country. So, if Sue, to my audience, is someone who you believe in and you don't live in her district, do not hold back. And if you live in her district, of course, you know what you need to do, but we need to support good candidates. So, Sue, I want to thank you so much for giving us a quick insight into who you are. We will be watching the campaign, and of course, we wish you well and appreciate you coming on.
Great. Thank you so much. I enjoyed being here.
No problem. And to my audience, guys,